Welcome to this explainer. For decades, the United States has basically been the undisputed beacon of opportunity for the world's brightest minds. If you are a highly skilled immigrant, maybe a top-tier engineer or a brilliant innovator looking to make your mark, America wasn't just an option, it was pretty much the default destination. You brought your talent, and the US gave you the ultimate platform to build the future. But that long-held narrative, it's really starting to crack. Today, we're diving into the data, the shifting policies, and the real human stories that show us exactly why top tech talent is actually starting to pack up and leave the US. Okay, let's dive into this. To really understand the stakes here, we have to look at a quote from our source material that just hits the nail on the head. This story is all about the American dream. Historically, there was almost this unwritten contract, right? The US welcomed top global talent with open arms, and in exchange, the country got these massive, incredible waves of innovation and technological dominance. It was a perfect, mutually beneficial setup. But lately, with all the administrative chaos and the constant back and forth on visa policies, that foundational contract is seriously breaking down.
So that calculus is changing. We're now seeing this massive trend where immigrant workers, people who feel like they've done absolutely everything right, followed every single rule and paid their dues to stay in this country, are now genuinely wondering if the US even wants them here at all. And I want to be clear, this isn't just some minor administrative hiccup. This growing disillusionment is directly threatening the competitive advantage that America has held on the global stage for decades.
Section 1. The Visa Bottleneck. The raw numbers behind the system.
To understand why this calculus is changing, we really have to look at the math. It's down here at the micro level where we see exactly why the current system is causing so much widespread frustration for the very people the economy relies on most. Just listen to this number. 2/3. A staggering 2/3 of tech workers in Silicon Valley are foreign-born. Let that sink in for a second. Even though the United States is literally the absolute powerhouse of the modern AI-fueled economy, it hasn't achieved that entirely on its own. For years, it has relied heavily on an influx of highly skilled immigrants, particularly from countries like India and China, to build and sustain that incredible technological lead.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core of the problem. Every single year, the U.S. government issues 400,000 F-1 visas for foreign students coming to study at American universities. But at the exact same time, they only offer 85,000 H-1B visas for international talent looking to stay and actually work at American companies. It is a massive systemic bottleneck. Think about it. You've got hundreds of thousands of highly educated, capable foreign students trying to squeeze through a tiny door for a fraction of available working visas. The math just simply doesn't add up for them.
Section 2. An indefinite limbo. The lived experience.
Now, to understand the human cost of this mathematical bottleneck, our source actually interviewed 50 highly skilled immigrant workers to find out why they're actively debating whether to keep fighting to stay in the US or just take their talents elsewhere. The most crucial point they found is captured right in this quote from the interviews, that indefinite limbo is not good for anybody. Let me share Vivek's story with you. Vivek was part of the very first wave of H-1B visa holders who arrived back in the 1990s. He came to plug a critical tech gap at IBM, which, by the way, was a massive dream job for him. He was working at their top lab. Now, for international talent, the H-1B has long been seen as the most viable path to a green card and a permanent life in the US. But after IBM sponsored his green card, Vivek found the actual timeline was completely, hopelessly unclear.
Vivek left India in 1994. It took an agonizing journey of almost 40 years, yes, 4 decades, before he reached a point where he could even apply for the final stage of his U.S. green card, the adjustment of status. Facing this opaque and seemingly endless wait, he basically said enough and created a plan B, applying to immigrate to Canada through IBM. And remarkably, his Canadian approval came through in just 2 months. Confronted with a 40-year crawl in the US versus a 2-month fast track in Canada, he pulled the trigger and moved north. Because of stories exactly like Vivek's, the mindset of incoming talent has fundamentally shifted. Modern talent is setting strict new boundaries. One worker we heard from stated plainly that when a US company presented an opportunity, his condition was absolutely clear. Unless they sponsored my green card from day one, I will not be interested in moving. The traditional H-1B route, with all its endless uncertainties, has just become far too unreliable for the world's most sought-after professionals. They want a deterministic path, a guaranteed time frame to plan their lives.
Section 3. The policy chaos. Mixed signals from Washington. When we zoom out to the macro political level, things get even more complicated.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the factual friction making life harder for skilled immigrants. The Trump administration, as reported in our source material, presented a real flip-flop on immigration policy. On one side, there's a stated desire to support top tech CEOs, who are obviously vital to the economy, by agreeing that the U.S. absolutely must recruit the best and brightest from the world. But then, right on the other side, the administration simultaneously pushes an America First policy aimed at strictly limiting immigration.
And this brings us to what the interviewees called the sticking point. For all 50 of the skilled immigrants interviewed, it wasn't just the long waits. It was this exact political unpredictability that finally broke their resolve. Hearing top leaders debate whether the country even needs foreign talent despite the massive, documented tech gaps was the exact moment the path they had carefully charted for themselves suddenly felt impossible. Because let's be real, you can't plan a family, build a career, or settle into a life when the rules of your residency might completely change depending on the shifting political winds.
Section 4. The Global Talent War. Competing nations pounce.
Let's move to the global stage and see how this builds into a worldwide recruiting pitch. Because as the U.S. struggles with its internal bottlenecks, the rest of the world is definitely not sitting still. The U.S. is no longer the only viable, lucrative option for the world's best tech talent, and other powerhouse nations are actively stepping in to recruit these disillusioned workers. We already talked about Canada offering that lightning-fast 2-month processing time, but look at Germany. German leaders are now on the record openly welcoming highly skilled Indians, publicly stating that bringing in these high-earning workers contributes significantly to German society and welfare. They aren't just processing paperwork anymore, they're literally rolling out the red carpet. So why does all of this matter for us? What's the big takeaway you should leave with? Well, it comes down to a pretty simple equation. If talented workers leave, American innovation takes a direct hit. The data is crystal clear. When U.S. workers operate alone, sure, they are productive, but when U.S. workers collaborate alongside foreign-born workers, the likelihood of innovating, inventing, and producing patents goes up considerably. That synergy of global perspectives is what actually drives the cutting-edge tech powering the U.S. economy today. Every parent dreams of giving their kids the best opportunities in life, right? And traditionally, bringing that talent to the U.S. was the very definition of the American dream. But if that dream is bogged down by a 40-year wait, a tiny visa lottery, and constantly shifting political goalposts, the talent is simply going to go somewhere else. Which leaves us with a final, pretty provocative question to consider. If the top talent leaves, where will the next great American innovation be born? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it provided a clear window into a complex and incredibly important global shift.